Hello, welcome to Conversari, a podcast where you will hear young climate advocates talk about their climate stories, experiences, journey in their climate advocacy, and their take on some of the most pressing issues surrounding the climate crisis. Please welcome your host, Keith Siegfried. Hello, good afternoon, good evening, good day. Isang makakalikasang pagbati to everyone who are with us and listening to this podcast. Welcome to the third episode of Conversare, a series of climate conversation where we will hear climate advocates share their stories and their thoughts on some of the most pressing issues surrounding the climate crisis. So, for those who are listening with us, I thank you for being here again, and I hope that you will share this to your networks because today we will have another dedicated and amazing climate advocate that is with us and will be sharing her climate story. She is a very good friend of mine, and I know some of you know her based on her page. She is a food, nutrition, and health student at the University of British Columbia and an advocate from Hong Kong. Please welcome, before I take up most of the time talking, please welcome a very good friend of mine and an amazing and dedicated climate advocate, Miss Rachel Chan. Hello, Rachel.
Hi, Keith. Thanks for the really warm welcome. I'm really glad to be here and talking to you today.
I'm very glad also. Actually, Rachel is the very first one whom I invited in this conversation, but it is only this third episode because, of course, of differing schedules and a lot of other responsibilities that we had. But now we are here. She is with us and she is ready to share her climate stories and talk to us about some pressing issues about the climate. So, as part of the tradition of Conversari, we are asking our guests to tell their climate stories because I believe, and I know everyone believes, that climate stories will really tell a lot about the climate advocate. But we will talk more about that. For now, if you would mind sharing us your climate story, who is Rachel Chan and what is her advocacy? You have the floor.
Thank Keith. So I am Rachel. I am in Hong Kong and I am from Hong Kong. And I am right now studying in the University of British Columbia as a food, nutrition, and health student, as Keith mentioned in the beginning. And I started, the first time I heard of global warming is when I was in grade six in a general studies class when the teacher told us that the world is warming because mostly because of fossil fuel burning. And then I was really scared and I really changed my habit of turning on the aircon every day after I went home because it was really hot. And I stopped doing that, but I didn't really do anything more because I didn't know what to do. And then, but then I started hearing more about it in a Chinese calligraphy class I used to go to. The teacher actually warned us that we won't be needing winter clothes very soon because it will be really hot very soon. I didn't believe it and I tried to deny it because it's just too hard to believe. But then right now, I am really not needing most of my winter clothes. And yeah, so it's really sad. And then the turning point that really made me care about the climate and become an advocate is when I watched a documentary a few years ago about coral reefs bleaching. And I really see that coral reefs are indeed bleaching. And it's just really devastating to really see that environmental destructions are happening before my eyes. And I was just so shocked after watching that documentary. I just started finding petitions to sign and finding ways that I can help because I just think that I can't just sit here and do nothing and see the world degrade. So that is when I started writing signing petitions, and then I had the chance to go to UBC. And in UBC, I had really a lot of opportunities to be involved in sustainability. And so I became an ambassador and I took some classes about the environment and joined some advocate groups to like advocate for a plant-based diet and just join some meetings on campus about sustainability and be involved in planning in about sustainability on the campus and really try to learn more about what climate crisis really is. And my understanding about the climate crisis is still evolving today. It went from like a really a problem just about the planet, about destruction, to my understanding right now that it involves climate injustices and that human is really being affected by it. Not to say that other species, of course, the planet is being destroyed, but then I feel like sometimes the facet that humans are also being affected is being ignored, and that is why maybe not all of us is really aware and care about the climate crisis. And during my time in UBC, a super typhoon hit my home, Hangfa, and it really flooded the place. Like we can find cans and plastic bottles from decades ago just floating around the streets because it just flew back because of the typhoon. And I was in UBC at that time, and I was just seeing from afar the destruction the typhoon brought to my home, just windows flying around, and then everyone had to just go to the supermarket and hoard food and stuff, just like in the pandemic. And that was when I was again really um, feeling hopeless, kind of, and also just wanted to help. And yeah, it's just from that point onwards, I became more involved, and that is kind of the turning point, the documentary and the typhoon that made me really care because I just feel like if I do nothing, my home might really be flooded, and I don't want that to happen.
So you see, I've already read your climate stories because you share that with me in my blog. You also share that during the launch call of the Youth Working Group, but still listening to it, reading it before and now again, it's still is a very inspiring and actually a very eye-opening um, thing to do. And that's what climate stories give us. It opens our eyes with the experiences of others. It gives us an idea on the journey that this climate advocates do. Just like you shared how from your sixth grade you became aware of the climate crisis. Then on you started building your advocacy, learning more about the climate and the world around us, and participating in different advocacy works. So, kasi climate stories really tell a lot about a certain advocate, about a certain individual. And because I know that you know because you are sharing climate stories through your advocacy page. So, um, what do you think is the importance of climate stories to the advocate, to the person sharing the story?
I think writing the story really gives me clarity of why I am doing this. Before, I kind of know, but writing it out and having the thought process really made me um, become passionate about it again because I'm seeing it in writing and I know, yeah, that's why I want to do it. And it kind of motivates me. And maybe sometimes reading it again helps me in like kind of a hopeless time, like, yeah, this is why I started. And I really, yeah, it just gives me a motivation to keep doing it. And I just hope that a climate story is a way to kind of um, influence people and inspire people in not a very pushy way to say, okay, you need to recycle now, you need to stop doing blah 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 blah. It's kind of like a way to be in touch with another person and inspire empathy and understanding.
So that's great, actually. Also, when I was writing my story, when I submitted my story to your page, it made me also reflect on the things that I did, on the journey that I took, on the mistakes and the regrets that I had before. Because um, no two climate stories are the same, and each climate story tell a different story. I know that's redundant, but you see, other climate stories focus on the experiences a certain advocate had before. Some climate stories focus on the journey that the advocate took in order to become an advocate. Others focus on the regrets and mistakes that a person did in order to be new, correct those mistakes, and be involved again in the climate movement. So You see, climate stories really have a very significant impact and a sentimental value to the person telling the story or who owns the story. And more importantly, it has a very significant role to the one receiving the story, to the listener, to the viewer, or to anyone who's watching, listening, or reading the climate stories. And just like what you said, it is one way of advocating, not in a pushy way, because based on my opinion, this climate stories actually show the human value of the climate movement. This shows that the different advocates that we have are also humans. They also have different experiences. They have um, different mistakes. They went on a process in order to become what they are now, where they are now. And this shows also the vulnerability. And this is one way that our audience, those who are receiving our stories, those who are receiving our presentations, let's say like that, connect with us or relate with us because this shows our vulnerability, our weaknesses, and our strengths also. Right.
That's very true. I couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah. But you're the expert with climate stories because for everyone who are with us this day, Rachel is sharing climate stories in her Instagram account. I don't know. I think some of you already follow her. If not yet, follow her. Later on, we will give the details. But she is that project of yours, that advocacy of yours, is a very good one because you are giving climate advocates a platform to share your story. Actually, before learning your climate advocacy, before learning about you, before the youth working group call, I don't know where to publish my climate story. I only publish it in my blog, and I think other climate advocates as well, have little idea on where they could publish or where they could share their climate stories and be heard and reach a lot of people. But you gave us um, an avenue or a platform to do that. So how did you come up with that Instagram page, with that advocacy?
So I was attending the climate reality training 2020 July, and then the first time I heard of a climate story, I didn't really know what it was. But then after writing it and reading a couple of them from my group, I was really inspired and I was really moved by their story. And I really think that there's a value in climate story like you just mentioned. And I really want to create a space for climate reality leaders and everyone else who is interested to share their stories, a platform to share it so everyone can see it. Because we spend such great, like we spend time writing this great story, and I really want to showcase, have a place to showcase all of them. So I thought it would be a great way to just share it and maybe reach a larger audience, even reach people outside of the climate conversation. So I was really hoping to use stories as a way to inspire empathy and understanding and maybe kind of inspire people to care about the climate crisis.
Yes, actually, that's another thing. You inspire others outside of the climate movement because sometimes, this is my fear actually of staying in an echo chamber wherein only those in the climate movement actually see what you are doing or notice what you're doing or participate even in what you are doing, and that's the thing that we need to break. We need to move away from our echo chambers and um, share our advocacy, share our stories to people outside the climate movement because that is basically our target audience to inspire others to be involved in the climate movement, to join us in this movement and be advocates themselves. How many climate stories have you shared so far in your page?
Around 20, and because in the summer I had a lot of time to share it maybe once a day, but now when school started, I'm really struggling to find time to do it and maybe reach out to people. So I'm really hoping to reach out to more and post more often. And yeah, like you said, reach out to people outside of conversation because it is super important to break the echo chamber and reach people with other opinions and listen to each other. So yeah, that's really what I was trying to do.
Yes, that's why your page is actually a great place to do that because we could share that easily with others. Um, we could invite others to share their climate stories as well easily, share it to other platforms as well. Aside from, of course, incorporating your climate stories to your own presentations, which is again another good thing. Um, from those 20 climate stories that you have shared, what are the lessons that you have learned? What are your realizations from those 20 stories?
Um, I realized that there are just a really wide variety of reasons why people care about the climate. Some might care because they experienced a change in their environment, maybe a disaster like a hurricane, or just that there are less animals around them, or some care because of their children. They want to give them a better future, and just that everyone becomes a climate advocate for many different reasons. And it's just really inspiring to read their journeys, and it really inspires me to do more also and try to publicize their stories more so people can read these inspiration, like really inspiring stories.
Yeah, just like you see, different stories again are have different elements in them. No two climate stories are the same. That's why it is very important for us, climate advocates, to share our stories to others in order to inspire others, let them know of our journey. Because maybe those outside the movement are experiencing the same things that we have experienced, or um, are in the same situation as we had before, and it is your climate story that will to push them lightly to join us in the movement. You see, it's very important. Our climate stories are very important tool to advocate for the climate, to inspire others to take action, to join the movement and be advocates themselves. So, based from those stories, based on the lessons that you have learned, um, are there what are the most important or most essential stories, or the stories that really hit you the most or really caught your attention the most?
There are a few that really moved me when they're describing their lived experience with a disaster. Like one of them was talking about Hurricane Maria. They're recounting their experience in their hometown, how electricity went out for days and it caused a lot of casualty, and it just really saddens me and moves me to read those stories because I am only one person living in one place, and it is hard for me to um, know what is happening in other person's life. And reading these stories really like maybe understand their perspectives and their experience. And I'm really thankful for them for sharing their stories because it really involves emotional and mental energy to write these perhaps traumatic experience. And I'm really thankful that they're sharing these experiences to really raise awareness of the serious extent of the like what the climate crisis can cause. And another story that I was really inspired by is the one is yours, the one the one you wrote because you changed your path from wanting to be a teacher, and then now you're studying a master's. And you talked about your regrets um, in your undergrad by like you talked about how your priorities were different. But I would also really want to hear like if you are open to maybe talk a bit about your story if you're open.
Yes. Actually, um, my story is more of the regrets that I had during my earlier days as an advocate. Because before I am already member of the climate movement, or I'm already advocating for the climate, but I am a passive advocate. I am not as active as I am now. I was just sharing posts before or attending seminars, but I am not doing as much actions as I am now doing because before, even though I had a lot of opportunities, I wasted those opportunities. Um, I had different priorities before, which is, I think, a funny thing to say now because what's more important or what should be more prioritized than the future of the planet or the climate itself? So I lost those opportunities given to me. I became the president of an organization at my university. I became the head of the environmental sustainability committee of the entire university student body. I could have done a lot of things. Actually, I had plans to do a lot of things, as just like to ban single-use plastic at my university, um, encourage paper recycling, and a lot of sustainable changes. But I was not able to do those things because of that silly priorities that I had. Which, if I could change now, I would probably change. But I think those mistakes that I did before made me who I am now, made me regret those things. That's why which it pushed me, or those mistakes pushed me to change myself and become more active in the climate movement. That's why I am here. If you will ask me 2 years ago or even 1 year ago if I will be doing this podcast or if I will be doing activities like webinars and such, I would have said no. But now, because I realized the mistakes that I had before, I am doing this. And I am here talking to you, talking to Rachel, sharing my story, and doing whatever I can to help for the climate.
That's
That's
really
my story.
that's really awesome.
So, you see, we have different journeys. We have your journey is based on the fear that the global warming and the climate change is inflicting to us humans and to your family and immediate community. My journey is about the mistakes that I had, and others have different journeys. Others tell um, similar experiences, like in extreme weather events. Others would tell the journeys that they had also. But aside from these stories, what are the other advocacies that you are doing?
So I am also a part of actually I gotta think about it. Yeah, the first one I can talk about is the Invisible Earth magazine that we plan to publish in September 25th in support of the Global Day of Climate Action. So we were a part of Youthify that Keith is also a part of. And then um, a few of us wanted to create a magazine to showcase arts as a as a way of climate activism, so artivism. And then we published a teaser now on our Instagram page that features artists from all over the world, and our team also has team members from all over the world. So we're really grateful of our team members and artists who have contributed their time to put together this teaser, which has really amazing art. And Keith is also a part of it, and he's a writer, and he has written poems and also his stories in that teaser. So it's just a way to use another avenue to for climate activism. Art, I think, art is a really influential way to advocate for the climate because also, it's like the story is not pushy, it's just inspiring and it has sentimental value, and it's just an interesting project that we're doing. And then I am also a part of FAIR. It's an local organization in Hong Kong that I'm a part of, and then we are kind of promoting local tourism, sustainable tourism. So we want to encourage people to stay in Hong Kong to play instead of um, flying short haul flight over the weekend to lower our carbon emissions. So I'm also part of that. And in UBC, I am a part of my faculty's representative in the student council. So I'm also a part of the sustainability committees to maybe learn about the policies our school is doing and maybe provide some feedback for them. And also, I'm a part of a plant forward student group that we wrote a report to suggest some recommendations for UBC to become a more plant-based campus.
So you have a lot of advocacy that you are doing. I think that's great and that's very inspiring. And it shows that you are really doing whatever you can in order to help our climate. If you could talk more about that plant-based advocacy that you have, um, how did you start your plant-based advocacy?
So I started eating mostly plant-based this March. So I was taking a class last term, and then one class the instructor was talking about flat tree farming, and then it really hit me again that um, animal agriculture can really be detrimental to our climate and also animal welfare, of course. It is not the first time I hear about this. I heard about this the first time when I was in secondary school. I watched a horrible documentary. I think it's called The Earthling about factory farming. It was so horrifying that it talked about how horribly animals are treated, but it didn't really change my diet habit. But then when I learned about factory farming in university again, I was already advocating for the climate, and I just find it natural for me to really have the like just do it, like change my diet to a more climate friendly one. So I started eating less meat and yeah. But then I also feel like eating plant based is very difficult and it is not the only way to protect our environment. So it is also I don't think it is necessary for everyone to be all plant like vegan or vegetarian. I just think that um, we can consider maybe minimizing our meat intake or be as plant-based as possible or even just eat plant-based once a week because eating plant-based like mostly plant-based is very difficult. Like as a nutrition student, I know that you need to consider your nutrient intake of iron and vitamin B12, and all the inhibitors and enhancers in your diet will affect the bioavailability of these nutrients in your diet and blah, 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 so on. So it's really hard to have a nutritionally balanced plant-based diet. And that's a challenge. And I am still learning. I don't know everything about it. And yeah, I am right now it's like how many months? 8 months into it. I'm still eating mostly um vegetarian diet. Yeah.
Uh, So you see, also, I think plant-based diet is also one of the advocacies of many people. And actually, I'm considering shifting to plant-based diet now because of one documentary also that I saw. I think that's Cowspiracy, a very controversial um, documentary. And actually, I needed to read about um, the accuracy of some of the data showed there because, of course, natural skepticism. But really, industrial animal agriculture is very detrimental to the climate, especially if it is not practiced sustainably, because industrial animal agriculture contributes to, if not the top producer of methane, one of the top producers of methane. For an agricultural country such as the Philippines, it is the second top emitter of greenhouse gases. But just like you said, it is very difficult to shift a plant-based diet because you need to have a change in mindset in order to change your behavior, especially if you grew up in a place where most of the cuisines that you have, or most of the foods that you have, are plant based, which is the case here in the Philippines, especially in my region. Um, could you share some of the challenges that you had when you were starting your plant-based journey? Because I think one of the most difficult part of starting a plant-based diet is the transition. So what are the challenges that you have experienced?
I think when I first started a plant-based diet, I really looked at it in a very Western lens. So most of my food choice, I was looking for recipes of like vegan and vegetarian recipes in predominantly Western sites, and it didn't match my palate because I've lived in Hong Kong my whole life. I love Asian food, so it's hard. So at that time, I was like, no food matches my palate. What should I do? But because I was so stuck in that, because I learned about this in a Western context, so my mindset is just shifted towards that. But then I started to look more broadly. I mean, like search broadly into like vegetarian diet in Asian context. I found more recipes that match my palate more. So I feel like maybe just find what works for you and don't try to follow a rule or um, yeah, just find food that you like to eat because it's supposed to be enjoyable too. And also just try to learn more about your own body because not everyone, not a plant-based diet doesn't suit everyone. Like some food, maybe beans, can be easily intolerant for somebody. So yeah, seek out more information.
Yes, because just like what I've said, many are advocating. Actually, many have very controversial opinions about plant-based diet. Some are saying that, um, actually, this is from the um, documentary, that there's someone who gave a statement there that if you're an environmentalist, or if you're an advocate of the climate and environment, and you are not on a plant-based diet, that you're a hypocrite because you're still patronizing um, food that came from one of the top producers of greenhouse gases. So you have already you already gave an insight your insight about this. But what can you say about those who are saying that environmentalists or climate advocates who are not on a plant-based diet are hypocrites or shouldn't be called environmentalists? What is your opinion about that?
So recently I also read a few Instagram posts about this, and my views are that it echoes with other posts. Like, I think everyone can be an environmentalist, and you don't like diet is only a part of it. If you can be plant based, that is the best, of course. Like, environmentally wise, you're contributing to less emissions, but then we all have our personal circumstances. Changing a diet is radical and it involves a like really determined mindset. And to change to a plant based diet from like a really meat rich diet, it's not an easy task. If they're making progress and they're trying to um, just caring about the climate, I think they don't have to be plant based. I think, yeah, that's what I think. I think, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's correct. Actually, when I watched that documentary, I um felt a bit guilty about that. And actually, I went to the hub, the reality hub, and searched for um, the opinions and insights of others about that. And many are saying, many actually, environmental activists have different views on this one. Some are very radical about this, that we really need to change our diet to plant based one. Others are saying that if do whatever you can. If you can shift to a completely plant-based diet, then do so. If not, then um, as long as you are doing things for the environment, because what although this is not to underestimate the impacts of human beings, but the top is still the top contributor to the greenhouse gas emissions, which is the root cause of the problems, or those big corporations, the carbon majors, the um, countries who contribute the most to the greenhouse gas emissions historically and at this moment. So I can, I feel the same way as you, that do whatever you can. If you can change your mindset easily and adapt to a more plant-based diet, then do so. However, if you still cannot, then just like any other journey, it would take time to change your mindset slowly and steadily until you'll be able to really um, do a plant-based diet or reduce your meat consumption. But there are also studies um, saying that in the future there is a need to really embrace plant-based diet. It's not anymore a choice, but it's already a need. We don't have any other choices but to embrace plant-based diet, because industrial animal agriculture will not be able to supply the demands of mm, the human population. What is your opinion on that?
Recently, I am taking an international nutrition class, and we're talking about hunger. And the instructor posed the question, should we eat meat? So my answer is that, and also based on some studies, some readings we're doing, the conclusion is that developed countries or people who are already well fed, who is already eating a nutritionally dense diet, who is not at risk of undernutrition, should reduce their meat consumption. It doesn't mean that you have to take on a completely plant-based diet, but reduce your meat consumption. And yeah, because reducing your own meat consumption can also have other health benefits. Um, and then the reading also suggested that if people who are at risk of undernutrition, um, meat can actually benefit their their nutrition status, because they are nutritionally dense, and it can they can provide micronutrients like iron, zinc, vitamin B12, calcium, and also macronutrient proteins. So meat is not all evil for in a public health perspective, because it can mitigate the risk of undernutrition. But I do think that if you have the ability and if you're able to, then reduce your meat consumption.
Oh yeah, that's correct. Um, if you can reduce your meat consumption, if you cannot, at least practice sustainable animal agriculture in order to lessen the um, amount of greenhouse gas emitted, because there are many emerging practices, and actually practices that have been developed before, that harnesses the natural ability of animals in order to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, such as regenerative agriculture and other forms of sustainable agriculture. And I think we should learn more about that. And while we still can um, use animal as source of nutrients, we do that sustainably and hope for the best. That's all I can say. Um, you have already said some tips, but are there additional tips that you want for those who are considering plant-based diet, or who are considering to reduce their um, meat consumption, such as me? I'm already reading some um, tips on how to reduce my meat consumption or to easily shift to a plant-based diet. But do you have any tips for us who are considering, who are not yet there, but it's almost there?
Don't take my advice as like the golden standard or something, because I'm still learning and I'm no professional. But lately I just realized that supplements can also there's the source of the vitamins or minerals from a supplement can be animal based. So if you're a vegetarian or vegan, maybe you can look out whether the supplement you're taking is actually plant based. I realized mine is not until like a few weeks ago. So I am seeking a new one, which is vegan or vegetarian. So that's one thing I just learned. The other thing is um, I actually think, in my perspective, supplements might be essential, especially for women, because the iron requirement for women is super high. It's actually 32 grams per day. Sorry, 32 milligrams per day. So it's not super attainable in a normal plant-based diet. So maybe learn seek out more information about that. Don't take my advice as like what it is. Like maybe talk to a health professional or maybe just seek out more information online. Reliable online information.
Okay, so thank you for those tips. I will take note of those ones and apply, of course. And of course, couple that with some things that I will be able to find online and some professional advice from nutritionists and dietitians. And so far, we have talked a lot of things from climate stories, climate journey, to a plant-based diet. And I know that our listeners have learned a lot from our conversation um, this day, this morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you are listening to this. And actually, this is one way of mainstreaming climate conversation because it is important to talk about these things on a casual way. So, is there anything that you want to, a concluding message that you want to tell our viewers for listening with us?
Thank you so much for listening to this podcast. Please support Keith. He's doing a lot of amazing initiatives, including this one. And if you are interested to, you can also check out my Instagram page to submit your story. It's at your climate story on Instagram. Thank you so much.
So thank you very much, Rachel, for that. And we had a very fruitful conversation this day in this episode. I know that our audience will learn a lot. And from the importance of climate stories to the person telling it, and also to the listeners or viewers or those who will receive the climate stories, up until the importance of plant-based diets and ways in order to shift the plant-based diets or approach plant-based diet. Me myself, I have learned a lot from that. And I thank you so much for accepting my invitation to be part of this podcast. And just like what Rachel said, you may follow her on her Instagram account, share her Instagram account if you can, and you should, but I'm not forcing you. Share your story. Um, invite others to share their stories as well. And please also check out the different initiatives that Um, I have and also Rachel have. So, do you want to promote Invisible Earth magazine?
Oh, for sure, yeah. So Invisible Magazine, you can check us out on Instagram. It's maybe Keith you can also plug it in. It's Invisible Earth Mag, but the it's yeah, maybe you can list the name out. It's kind of tricky to read it. But yeah, we're trying to publish the full issue soon. So stay tuned to it. Thank you so much.
Yes. So stay tuned to that. We will see a lot of um artivist artwork, from literary pieces to photographs and other forms of visual art, that you will really see the story of climate advocates through different media. And that's the end of this episode of Conversari. We had another episode that is jam-packed and full of new learnings and of course enjoyable conversations. So thank you very much, Rachel. Thank you very much to everyone who are with us. But before I end, I would just like to tell to the viewers, listeners, that aside from uploading this, we are of course available on Spotify still at bit.ly/Spotify. You can see it here, but we will also be available on YouTube as well. So after listening to this, you may watch our conversation on YouTube. Just go to bit.ly/Climate Wanderer YT and you will see there the video version of this conversation. And also, if you haven't yet listened to the past two episodes, the first one is my conversation with Sofia Gutierrez about the Global South and the theme of the Global Day of Climate Action. The second one is with Avia Garval, a very good climate advocate from India, where we talked about climate awareness. So if you haven't listened to that after listening to this episode, go ahead and listen to the previous two episodes and go to the YouTube page. And please follow this podcast, share to others, and also do that as well in my YouTube page. And again, thank you very much. And I will leave you with this quote: the climate story of a particular advocate is not only a story per se, it has a very sentimental value to the person who owns that story. But most importantly, it has a very significant effect to the ones who will receive those stories. So please share your stories. And with that, isang makakalikas ng pagbati sa ating lahat. Thank you very much for listening and stay safe and have a good day, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Keith.